Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for ZETA's December Tech Talk. We're diving into one of the most urgent topics of the moment, TikTok's future in the US. Today, I'm really thrilled to be joined by a truly exceptional guest. She's a digital powerhouse with over 2.7 million followers across social media and over 200 billion with a B views on her content across those platforms. An incredibly accomplished creative with a vision and the ability to connect with audiences all over the world, and someone who is Gen Z, which is amazing. In addition to that, her monumental digital influence, she is a proud 2025 ZETA Content Creator Partner and Fellow, using her platform not just to entertain and connect with people, but to advocate, inspire, and educate. Her work is the perfect intersection of Gen Z culture and the broader conversations we're having about technology, creativity, and the future of our digital lives. Please join me in welcoming the incredible Kai to the conversation.
Hello.
Hey Kai, it's good to see you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Oh my goodness, what an introduction that was. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I have to say, like, before we get into the conversation, I'm particularly excited to have you here because as an organization that like has a strong policy foot right in DC, like we are really well aware of what's happening politically. But what so many folks are not aware of is how these political conversations and the topics that we're going to be getting into today are impacting our creative community and the leaders who are shaping culture like you. So I'm like particularly excited to have you. And also happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to start off the conversation by just giving us a little bit of context. So let's talk about the TikTok countdown. So what is the big deal here, right? What's happening in January 2025 with ByteDance and the divestment deadline that we have on January 19th? That deadline, January 19th, is the deadline that's been imposed for ByteDance, which is the company that is the parent company of TikTok, to divest its holdings in the US for TikTok. That deadline came about after a bill that was introduced in Congress got a lot of bipartisan effort and set that deadline. And the concern there is national security, right? There have been some developments that I think are really important for us to address and just like share with people for those that haven't been like keeping up with the latest news in the last few days. 2 days ago, the CEO of TikTok, who's Singaporean, met with President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago to talk about this and to talk about the fact that just a couple of, I want to say days or just a few weeks ago, an appeals court like upheld that deadline. And it's coming up in exactly a month. After that meeting 2 days ago, we've seen a lot more messaging from Trump saying that, you know, he loves TikTok, he's a fan of TikTok, and the CEO has called on the Supreme Court of the United States to hear that case and to consider that divestment deadline, and the Supreme Court has agreed. So that's a lot of developments for the last 2 days. But now the Supreme Court is slated to hear arguments on January 10th, which is just 9 days before the deadline. So we're going to have a really busy next month with all of these deadlines, all of these developments, which is just a lot to keep track of. But ZETA is going to help us keep track of all of these pieces and bring perspectives. So I just wanted to set that background for everybody. And now I have a question for you, Kai. So TikTok isn't just another app. It's a cultural force. I think that that's something everybody can agree on, right? From trending dances to breaking news, how has TikTok changed how our generation connects, creates, and gets informed? So I'm going to pass it over to you.
For sure. Oh my goodness. Well, TikTok has revolutionized the communication between us all. I really do believe whether you're walking down the street and you hear someone singing a TikTok trend, or you just see someone doing a little TikTok dance in the bathroom, it has created this ecosystem for us all to understand a whole new language within sound. And I think it's just been completely revolutionary as someone that creates music and remediates, her own mental traumas throughout sound. TikTok has become a companion for so many, just to get through life, to feel inspired, to make themselves feel bigger than what they are. And so for me, TikTok has changed my life completely. TikTok is my family. TikTok is my home. They live in a part of my brain. TikTok is just this foundation for me that helped me create this version of myself for others and me to be inspired to continue to create. Not only does TikTok just educate completely, I mean, the educational system on TikTok is so ginormous. It's incredible. Every time I see something, I'm learning something new. TikTok is the hub for that. And I think they even helped people, so many of all ages, learn. It's not just about the music they're bringing to the table. It's not just about the controversy. It's not just about the drama or the theater. They educate people daily. TikTok is an educator. That is what it's for. And for me, that is the most valuable platform that we've ever been able to partake in. Because yes, we watch movies and, but watching a few seconds and learning something that you didn't know yesterday is the way of the future. So they, for me, is the remote of how we navigate this life. And TikTok has just been this awesome place for me to express myself freely, beautifully, and creatively and theatrically throughout a healthy way. And I'm very grateful. So thank you, TikTok.
Yeah, I think you touch on something that's like so important for us to highlight. As a Gen Z organization that's elevating Gen Z voices in tech, and it's something that we haven't heard included in the conversation recently with all of these headlines, and that is, it's the fact that 94% of Gen Z are on social media every single day. Right? Like that is a huge percentage of our demographic that is on social media, consuming educational content, engaging with culture, organizing. And I'm a little like, I don't know what to make of this statistic, but our generation spends an average of 2 hours and 40 minutes on social media every single day. It's where we're living our lives. And I think there's a whole nother conversation about whether that's good or whether that's not so good and how to regulate that. Personally, right? How to personally regulate that for ourselves. But it is where we are. It's where we're living our lives and creating our future, at least, right? So I'm gonna help us dive here into this first segment of the conversation, TikTok and national security, sorting the facts here and making sure that we contextualize them for us. So I'm gonna give a little bit of clarity here on what is that concern and what's the truth to it? Is this application a tool for surveillance or is it a scroll-friendly app, right? Like, what is the truth? I do think that there are obviously some national security concerns, right, around TikTok and how much data they collect, like any social media platform collects, right? That's the model of business for all social media platforms. They are data collectors. They create profiles on their users. They use that to market and then to like advertise. So that is not out of the norm for like a social media company. But the concern there is that TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is kind of at the whim, theoretically speaking, of the Chinese government, which has the ability to pull data from their companies, right, and use that for state purposes. And that's where the concern is, right? That is the concern that we've heard from lawmakers on all like political spectrum, right? That it's a national security risk. But up until this point, we haven't had concrete evidence that U.S. citizen data is being used that is collected on TikTok is being used in a malicious way against us. That's not to say that that can't happen. It could happen, which is important to recognize, right? But it hasn't happened yet. I'm going to insert a little narrative here, a little story, because as someone who like is always engaging with our policymakers and constantly like engaging with other tech leaders in Washington, D.C., I always get a surprised look when I start talking about national security as a Gen Z person. And I think that there is a misconception that from other folks, other generations, I guess, that Gen Z can't talk about national security in like a serious way. And that really bothers me. Like, I really don't like that because like we have like every ability to talk about and care about and think critically about national security as well. And so we have to do that. We have to do that critically, right? And up until this point, we haven't had any negative implications from any potential data leaks that we may not be aware of thus far from the data being collected by TikTok. I have a question for you on that from the Gen Z creative perspective. Do you think Gen Z cares enough about privacy and cybersecurity, or are we just here for the content?
Well, I had a complete moment in time with social media, especially even just like this past summer, where it is my friend. It is something that I go to when I'm feeling lost and distraught, when I need to feel inspired, when I'm feeling a sense of, I don't know, just, that yearning of creativity, wanting to expand, wanting to feel more, wanting to see more. I'm a very visual person. So social media became a mechanism in my daily life where I was able to find creativity and save it to my phone and look back at it later and be like, oh, I really like this. And oh, I really feel this. And it just gives you a sense of stimulation. I mean, it's instant stimulation. That's what it is. So, I mean, I think for me, I've been kind of always a natural flibbertigibbet towards life. It's just how I've been. It's not something I'm proud of. Okay. Very idiot savant, but I actually truly enjoy being this frolicking, everything is so wonderful type of energy. But when you're on social media, I learned this summer that a digital footprint does matter. And I didn't know these things. I just always, if I see something, I like it. Like I'm just that person. I enjoy creativity. I enjoy when I get to see something that I enjoy, I give it my energetic manner that I care. And that's how I see social media. It's not just me pressing a button on a metal slab. I'm exerting my energy towards this art form, towards this being, towards this music, towards this work. So it really depends on the person or the type of consumer that is consuming. Me as a creative that enjoys consuming and sharing it and spreading it and loving it. It's different for me, I guess. Social media is a part of my realm. It's a part of my world. It's a part of my mind. So I think we all have different relationships with it. I'm just kind of learning how to like put my phone down for the very first time. I've never been able to do it. I've always been a homeschool kid. Technology has been my life. And it just like always has. It just always has. It's like the thing that's just been a part of everyone's life, of course. And, I think all us techie nerds are all kind of the same, where social media is like a duh. It's like, you have your life, you make your food, you scroll on your phone. That's what you have. So it just depends on the consumer and depends on what they're willing to consume and how it affects them mentally. I feel like people were not really thinking ever since the pandemic. I know for me, it's been a hard to just get up and be like, okay, this is social media. This is actually a real mechanism. It's not just something bringing me joy in this moment. There's actually something with it, which I didn't know. I've lived my entire life just being like, I'm going to express, I'm going to feel, I'm going to like this. And whatever it means, cool, no thought process whatsoever. So now I'm having that feeling and I'm having that energy. And it just feels good to be more in tune to what I'm doing, but also knowing that I'm already in tune because I'm giving my energy towards something that I adore. And so for me, it's like, there's no repercussion to this because this is how I feel. You know what I mean? And so it just depends on the consumer. and the passion of the person, I think, too. A lot of kids were just, that's, I still consider myself a kid at heart, of course, but a lot of kids were on the phone and we're just like liking stuff, but it depends on how it affects the person consuming, for sure. And the people around them.
I think that's interesting because like you're talking about Gen Z just being surrounded by technology,
Yeah.
and like that's something to acknowledge, right? I mean, we talk about that all the time, that Gen Z is the first generation that grew up with technology, that grew up hyper connected all over the world, right? We are digital natives. And just to clarify, right, like millennials, we would describe them as like digital pioneers because they were there. They were there when it was built, right? Like they were teenagers, young adults when MySpace was a thing. I I think I had a MySpace for like a month before it like stopped being a thing. Um, and that was like I didn't even know I was a kid. I definitely was not supposed to have a MySpace, but um, you know, millennials were there when it was being built, and so they were like the pioneers, we'd call them. Gen Z was the first generation to really grow up with all these platforms. And what I've noticed, at least amongst like conversations around like social media usage, data collection, unhealthy uses, etc., from the conversations from other generations, is that they are concerned that Gen Z and younger generations are like live online, and they see that as a bad thing. And I understand the concern. I understand that there's a concern that like maybe you get lost online, but it is from Gen Z and Gen Alpha that I have heard some of the most constructive conversations around how to balance living in the digital world with always making sure that you're connecting with the real world. And so I want to note that because like I hear what you're saying, that like you're living in this space, you're creating in this space, like you're kind of free flowing in this digital world, and maybe sometimes we're not looking at what we're liking on social media, and we're just doing it. And so yeah, like there's some education to do there still with our generation around best practices, but I think that misconception is wrong, that like Gen Z is just like unknowingly like lost in the digital world. I don't think that's the case. And I have a statistic here that I think kind of like speaks to that. And it's that Gen Z are the most likely to perform digitally protective behaviors like paying for better security, like digital security, or trying to delete their data when they stop using a service. And so there's that balance, right? Like, yes, we're a generation that is like living in the digital world. We're digital citizens, but we also care about like the implications of that. And I think we will continue to care. This next question for this section is interesting. Should we trust the government? Have lawmakers or TikTok taken concrete steps to address these concerns, and are they enough? I have thoughts on this, if it's okay for me to like give to. Okay, so before starting ZETA, I actually had a fair amount of experience working with the congressional committee that put out that bill, that kind of championed that TikTok divestment bill, which is the House Select Committee on China. I did conservation work, and so I was working with them on the extraction of U.S. Mineral resources that were being extracted by companies that had parent companies that were controlled by the Chinese government. And so I've definitely been around some of those folks, like political leaders who are the ones leading this effort. Do I think they're doing enough? I think they are trying to address concerns around national security. In true Gen Z fashion, I feel some kind of way, and I think it's fair to recognize, I feel some kind of way that, and I guess this is very Gen Z because like we care a lot about the climate. We care a lot about conservation. I feel some kind of way that like it's very difficult for that same group of folks to think critically about like foreign extraction of that resource, like that U.S. resource, natural resources, which pollutes our water and like destroys our public lands. I find it difficult that like it's hard for them to pay attention to that in a bipartisan way when that's extraction of our resources, but they care deeply about the extraction of our digital resources, which is our data. So I feel some kind of way about that. And I'll just put that out there. I also like, I think it's difficult for me to say like, yeah, like what they're doing is tempered and fair, because giving a company like the instruction to divest, right? When TikTok is valued at like $200 billion, and the deadline is coming up so quickly, is I think in some ways like really unrealistic. And I think that really like is a disservice to us, to Gen Z, who use the platform so much and depend on it for so many things. I don't know if you have any thoughts on like the government in general around this topic. Happy to hear those.
You're like, what are your thoughts in general? Tell us. What are they? No, I would just say wholeheartedly, I know this is going to sound so kumbaya of me, but I genuinely believe that TikTok adds to the economy. And when it comes to a platform that adds to the economy, which speaking of so many different incredible, like when you think of infrastructures, artists, beings that add to the economy, these are things that keep our people alive, right? And the amount of motivational speakers, mental health practitioners, all these different things that have to do with restoring the mind on social media, we have still so much to learn about how to handle social media. We are in no place to get rid of TikTok, I believe, because we're still learning about it. We're still learning about how the human race even takes in all of this content from the square that we hold in our hands. So when it comes to the government, how do I feel about the government? I believe that we have a capability as a people to grow, because that's what we've done as a race throughout time. So I believe in growth. I believe that there's always room to grow. There's always going to be an opportunity for people to show more of what they believe in, of what they believe of how actually the platform benefits their lives. I feel like we need to see more of that, even though we're seeing so many people do it. When it comes down to the government, I just truly believe that no matter what, if you voice how you feel, there's room for growth. I don't know. I think of like a teacher in like the 5th grade giving you a star student star. You know what I mean? How do we get to those 5 stars? Well, the only way to do it is to, of course, show up. I go, of course, show up. But most importantly, to actually voice how you feel. You know, I feel like right now we're in such an interesting time with so many different emotions. The only thing that I always say is like, what I am here to do is to bring splendor to the space. I don't want to create another, I mean, even though I create performance art as a reactor, like I basically do tests where I see the human race and I see how they react and I create art form about it. That's what I do. I create it in my art form. I create art about the human race and how they feel, how they emote, and how they react. That's what I do. So when I see the world and how it's shifting emotionally, my smartest answer to this would be that the government, just like the human race, we all can grow and learn. All we have to do is listen to one another and communicate. And it just starts with that open communication. And that's it.
I mean, it really is that simple, right? And unfortunately, like in practice, we don't see that every day. And certainly like an organization like ZETA is definitely working to build out channels of communication so that concerns, questions, thoughts and ideas from our generation can be heard and understood and then acted on in Congress, like by federal policymakers, um, sometimes folks don't want to listen.
And you know what? And sometimes people don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I mean, it's a
I think it
double-edged,
goes
yeah.
both ways. It goes both ways. There's sometimes people they don't want to. They're too afraid to voice their opinion. They don't want to. And then
Yeah.
there's some moments where people are so willing. And I feel like it just takes that unique person, that unique individual who are willing to be that pair to speak their mind and speak about change in a way where everyone feels delighted, where everyone feels
Yeah.
comforted. And I
Yeah.
feel like TikTok has an opportunity because it's so diverse and so versatile that it can truly, if it mended with the government and became one with the government, that could be something that would be super awesome, right? Like if we just saw a few Congress people working with a few TikTokers, get different perspectives. You're going to have one side of the conversation, you're going to have another. Make sure that both are heard, both are shown, but both are brought to the table. I feel like it's really easy just to show both sides of the conversation because both opinions are valid.
I'm going to say, I'll say here, like, the economics of it, like the business of it, I I can't pretend that I know how to like lead that conversation. And I'm sure that there's a lot of depth happening right now on the part of like US business thinking about like TikTok, right? And how to like bridge conversation. I mean, obviously, right? Like the CEO of TikTok went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President-elect. So like there's a business aspect to that. Like obviously they're communicating. Like there's no doubt in my mind that like they are connecting regularly. Like and I was actually just looking at like TikTok content by the TikTok CEO on TikTok where he like talks about being in DC all the time, meeting with people all the time. They're connecting. What I don't see is people like you and I who are a part of the generation most impacted by this application leading conversation or being acknowledged in conversation enough. And that's what I like am still like trying to draw attention to, I guess, right? But let's kind of create this scenario, right? Like, I mean, if we were there having this conversation about policy, right? Like, what would that look like? And I have some prompts here for us to look at. So, beyond divestment, the deadline on January 19th, what are other policy solutions that we could discuss about how to shape TikTok's future? Broader solutions could potentially include passing national privacy laws, expanding transparency in supply networks, software supply networks, restricting cases where the use of like foreign technologies creates risks, not like banning foreign technologies, but like mitigating those risks, right? Like, could we put more effort into that and figure out, well, how do we reinforce our data without shutting ourselves off from the rest of the world, right? Like, if that's not the right thing to do. There's a law in the European Union, the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, that protects personal data, for example, and gives individuals the rights over their data. Do you think the US needs something like that? Or would that potentially kill like the creativity that like we see on these social media platforms by limiting the tailored content to users? Like, what are your thoughts on that as someone that obviously looks at the analytics, looks at metrics, looks at your audience, and tries to curate content around that?
Man, what a question, huh? I feel
Yeah,
like
I
I
know it's a
run
little big. Let me know if you want to unpack it.
No, 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 I like it, I like it. No, I kind of run into this kind of question with myself on a daily basis when I'm making music because it's like when you make music, you wanna make music for every type of listener. Definitely when you're someone that's like me, a rookie. You're someone that's starting out and you wanna make music for everyone, and you want to make sure that everyone feels involved and that everyone a part of the conversation feels included. And that's the same thing with the TikTok conversation. We don't want to, I mean, in my mind, I'm fighting for TikTok to stay. I'm for TikTok. I'm always going to be for TikTok. We are team TikTok forever and ever. Okay, that is the truth of the other truth. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. But at the same time, I don't want people to feel disrespected. I want them to be able to speak their minds, speak their sides, and feel valued, comforted, understood. And I feel like when it comes to creating content, just like making music, you want to make something that hits the algorithm and goes viral, right? How am I going to go viral today? How am I going to be my most bizarre, bombastic self? This is what I say every day if I'm in that mode. Right now, I'm in training mode, pre mode, right? So as I'm building for that, I'm creating more performance art. It's the same thing. It's like if you want to curate something that you know is going to do well based upon your analytics, I say do both. I say do everything. I say just do it all. That's me. That's what I'm preparing to do. Of course, I'm stepping into a new era where I'm no longer, sometimes I like to act like, I'm ageless, but really, we know I'm kind of an adult now-ish, right? I guess, sure. Um, and so I'm stepping into creating that content, making sure that people understand that I am an adult, that I do, I am silly sometimes, but I do like to make sure that all different types of people are touched on. Every type of viewer deserves to get what they receive, what they want from you to receive. They deserve it. They view you. It's what you should do. So I believe, yes, I believe that it won't limit anyone's creativity. If anything, it should boost what you know and what you have, and then add on your additional feelings and creativity that you want to add to the space, but follow that brick and mortar. And that's what I've been kind of doing in spurts. I've kind of, slowed my roll a little bit, just focused on my creativity, becoming a better artist, but do everything. I would say that doesn't limit anyone's creativity. It should add to it.
So it sounds like what you're saying is like you are, as a creative, like you, and also you called yourself like a rookie. You have over 2.7 million followers and like 200 billion views on your content. Like I would not call that a rookie, but I mean, you're just getting started, and that's kind of the crazy part, right? Like, but it sounds like what you're saying is like, yes, like there are options that the creative community, like in your case, like supports around giving people some like data autonomy, because at the end of the day, like as someone who's like artistic and creating this content, curating an experience, you are still true to yourself in the way that you do that. Like it doesn't necessarily like prevent your creativity. Maybe some tools shift, but like it's not something that like you are closed off to, like providing some like data legislation solutions there.
No, I think that's one of been the main things for me as of lately, because you know, I've been kind of just restructuring the way I'm going to position myself for my album, right? And it's just whole time of like thoughts, feelings, what I want to present, da 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 da. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do what I've been doing, being me, and I'm going to add on the newness of somewhat being an adult, I guess, sure, and smush them all together and see what works. I want to make sure that everyone feels like they're being fed appropriately. That's been like the biggest one. It's like, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Well, what do you like from me? And then how can I add this to my space to make it bigger? It's been kind of interesting, I will say, when it comes to even seeing how other people create and how TikTok is completely different for them. For me, it's like this whole spiritual business, creative, mental health experience that I've been able to call my forever companion, that I cannot see my life without. TikTok is something that I cannot see my life without. It has opened up every single door for me within my music, my artistry, everything for me to constantly keep creating. I cannot imagine the person that ever feels stunted, and I hope that no one feels stunted ever creating. I have moments where I take a break because I'm social media obsessed. Yes, and I say it proudly, okay? But I'm learning to be healthy. And I feel like it just starts with what you want to do and what works for you and what's worked. It's not what's worked in the past, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. The last question I had here under like policy, like let's dive into the policy, was security versus creativity. Do we really have to pick a side? It sounds like we don't. And like that's something that I wish that like was a frame of mind for lawmakers, like as they look at solving these solutions. I don't think we've ever banned away a problem. Like, I mean, I'm sure maybe there are instances where that's wrong, right? Like where we have, right? Like and fair, right? But trying to like say we need to shut down global interconnectedness because it's a threat to our national security, I think is just not like a holistic way of approaching the future, right? Like our desire, like especially our generation's desire to stay connected. So, so yeah, I mean, I don't think we have to pick a side. I think we should have the expectation as people and as policy leaders that we can reinforce like data security, ergo national security on this front, and also keep the creativity, keep the style of platform, keep the value of a platform like TikTok. And I wish that's what we were focusing in on right now. Our next segment is TikTok's impact on Gen Z culture. And I'm going to start with a question to you. Imagine a world without TikTok. What changes? How would losing TikTok affect creators like you, small businesses, and communities that rely on it?
Well, first off, TikTok has been this constant conversation where people have just been, I feel like from the moment it started, it was something that people wanted to take down. I remember even in the pandemic, I did an interview with Paper Mag, and they asked me the same thing: what would you do if TikTok went away? I was so blessed and grateful to be a part of that editorial. But um, to be honest, I would say I don't think TikTok's going away. And I'm saying this in like the strongest pursuit. And I think the only reason why I'm saying that is because it's becoming a Target, it's becoming a Walmart, it's becoming something that doesn't get removed. It's indelible. And I believe that if we just nurture it and we make sure that, I mean, this is something that I can pledge to do. I mean, I'm already going into my performance art. I can make sure that I scream it from the rooftops, and I will do my messaging of the best that I can do to make sure I'm standing up for TikTok. I even made a song about it when they wanted to take it away last year. Okay? I made a song about it. I'm always going to stand up for TikTok. So what I will say is that I don't even, if TikTok is to go away, I believe that it'll come back. I believe it'll come back. It was originally Musically, it came back as TikTok. I feel like this platform is indelible. It's a mark that cannot be removed. There's a few beings and energies in this ether that I believe are indelible, and TikTok has that. TikTok has powerful, I'm here to stay forever. I've been created in the core of the earth, so deeply encoded in so many people's lives, minds, creativity, spirits have changed so many people's different experiences. I mean, it's not just a platform, it is a world of its own, and social media is a world of its own. So I believe if TikTok is to go away, it'll come back and it will always be stronger than ever.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I agree with you on that, actually. I think that like this is a business, I guess, like a way of like speaking about that question, but there's a need for it, right? Like there's a business need for it, like there's a market need for it. And so even if it goes away, I do think that something will come back, right?
I
Where
don't
I
think it
think,
will, but
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I think it's smart.
so TikTok in 2024 released like a report on like TikTok use and business from like 2023, a report out of 2023. And I have some of those numbers, which I think are interesting to look at as well, that definitely make the argument that like if the like focus there is to make sure that like we're not hurting our small businesses, like it probably will not go away. And like there's going to be a point where like our leaders have to think about like how to make sure that they're also like standing up for their constituents, because there are 7 million businesses that are currently on TikTok in the United States of its 170 million active users. Like that's a huge number, right? And of those like small to medium sized businesses, their like investments in paid advertisements and marketing on TikTok in 2023 drove $14.7 billion in revenue to just 12 sectors that were looked at. Like that is a lot of like economic stimulation, right? And that's in 2023. I'm sure it's grown since then. So to your point, like, yeah, maybe we don't have to worry about it going away. Maybe we don't. Like maybe like, as we know, like this country likes to make decisions and really like focus in on like the value of business. Maybe this is something that like we don't need to be that concerned about because a solution will come up. I mean, maybe that's why we're hearing now, this kind of switch as we're getting closer to that deadline, on the part of policymakers and courts to say, let's revisit this as much as possible leading up to the deadline. I mean, for the Supreme Court to hear arguments on January 10th, just 9 days before the deadline, I mean, that definitely says something, right? So we will wait and see, I guess. TikTok isn't just viral, to your point, it's vital. What role does TikTok play in your life as a creator, and how has it helped entrepreneurs like you grow?
TikTok in my life, like I've mentioned before, I call it a creative companion. It is something that is so deeply interwoven into my world, because not only was it a place for me to truly find myself, to truly understand who I even had the capability of becoming, it is a navigator, it is an interpreter. I believe that TikTok, because it is something that is a music marketer, it has revolutionized not only the music industry, but entertainment forever. It took short form content and made it into something like going to a movie theater in your hands. YouTube had that capability and still does. I love YouTube. I love everything about YouTube. But TikTok really knows how to become one with your mind. And I think that's super important. And I think that's something that we should always understand, that if you ever feel like you don't understand your purpose, depending on what you scroll and like, you'll find something. And let me tell you, I never thought in a million years would I be able to create the music that I've been creating and feel so comforted by being my most authentic self in moments where I didn't think I was going to ever be okay. TikTok saved my life. And the incredible, profound, beautiful people that are able to view me on this metal slab is the biggest gift of all. And just being able to create that constant relationship within social media, your body, your spirit, and understanding your creativity of who you are, TikTok helps you find who you are. And I think that's super important, definitely in an age where people are trying to say so many things about social media. Social media helps you see yourself in a creative expression in a way that you never could. And it can change your entire life forever. And TikTok is the frontier of that. So that's what I'll say. TikTok is my creative companion.
It certainly is at the forefront, especially for our generation. And and that's not just even on the creative end. It's at the forefront of activism as well for our generation. And that leads me into my next question, which I think is one that I can speak to a little bit. Could losing TikTok silence Gen Z activism? There's some context there that I can give. So ZETA has a growing community of content creators, partners and friends across TikTok, Instagram, that that we engage with, and that are Gen Z, and that are working on different, social issues and political topics and cultural issues. I do think that, losing an application like TikTok, losing a platform like TikTok would have negative impacts for organizing for our generation, because the algorithms are different on every platform. And I will say, it seems like TikTok's algorithms have been a little bit more conducive to Gen Z organizing. And we've seen that, right? Like, TikTok activism has been used to address a multitude of issues: systemic racism, organizing Black Lives Matter movements, organizing around climate change. In the aftermath of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning of Roe v. Wade, there was a huge wave of like TikTok content and communities coming together to offer like safe spaces internationally for folks. And so I do think that there is a strong community of movement, organizing, activism on the platform. I do think that would be negatively impacted by the application going away. If it were to go away, which we're saying it's not, as of now, I do think it would be negatively impacted. I don't know if another platform could necessarily replace the kind of, to your point, like authenticity and like specific magic, let's call it, right, of TikTok. I don't know. How do you feel?
Wow. I would say that, first of all, I did have a note to say that I think it would be like absolutely phenomenal if the government made UN representatives for apps, or they made representatives for each platform, so that when it's not the owner of the platform, but someone comes in and speaks, and people are able to speak to this representative for the government about each platform. And I feel like that would just be like the coolest thing I've ever seen. When it comes
Well,
to
if anybody at TikTok or anybody in any of these committees in Congress wants to reach out to us, you're more than welcome to. In fact, we've reached out to a few and haven't heard back yet, or to some, from some. So that door is open. Like, but yes, you're right. Like, they should invite more voices into the conversation.
Yes,
Sorry.
yeah, not, and the thing is, it's not even just about like, I feel like just creating a committee of people that work in social media for the internet, for the moderation of the internet, and dare I say, interview all ages. Bring them in, because this is the lives that you're changing. You're changing your children's lives, that some of them are actually properly educating themselves in this platform and are creating incredible careers for themselves at such a young age. I know, incredible. But they're creating profound careers for themselves at such a young age, and their children. It's like you see the phenomenon of so many different children. They're changing our children's lives at this point. So I feel like when it comes to me and TikTok and the understanding of it, I've truly come to like a place in my heart that this platform feels like a country. It feels like a
Oh.
country. It feels, doesn't it feel like it? It has like the understanding of a country. It's these platforms, like so many, keep America and the world
Yeah.
alive.
I think
Content.
it feels like an international bridge, right? Like, but I think, like, to your, like, maybe like a country, right? Like, it's because, I mean, like, younger folks, our lives don't end where our phone screens start. Like, we occupy and live and exist in the digital space in a way that is authentic to just our full lived experience. And so to that point, like I do agree, yeah, like there's a whole lot of living that goes on these platforms. So to that degree, like it does feel like there is like a US TikTok community, and there's a lot of things that go on there, right? Business, politics, organizing, but then there's also that international community. So yes, yeah, but don't worry, like we're not, I guess for like disclaimer, we're not saying TikTok is its own country and we have to
No,
worry about like sovereignty issues there, because we don't.
no,
I
no.
don't think, right? Or I mean, I guess that's the concern, but that's not what we're saying.
No, but
Yeah.
I do imagine a world where social media can be represented in a way where it feels like you are operating in a space that you know is benefiting your community. It's benefiting the people around you. It's like I think because social media, no matter what, it's still kind of new. I feel like we're still new to it. There's still so much we're learning. So it's like, you hear it when you hear like even the TikTok trials and everything. It's like you hear it from it. It sounds like such a voice of TikTok is a problem, but I truly believe that TikTok, just like, I don't know, it reminds me of like the representation of my practice of what I'm truly going towards is showing humanity and how they react and feel and their emotions and letting it rise and seeing how America truly feels about things. Because really, the things going viral is what the consumer wants to go viral too, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I wanna like we're talking in like in this conversation, we're talking about like the value of elevating more voices, which is our mission, right? Elevating Gen Z voices in tech, and tech policy work. And yes, that is 100% true. We need more of that. What I want to also acknowledge, as someone that like I'm a California kid, like I grew up in California, small town, yay small town, but like I've lived in Washington D.C. for almost 10 years, and I've worked in policy that whole time. Like I've always been very engaged, going to meetings with congressional representatives, federal agencies, the White House. Like I've been around the block a little bit, and I'm still young, but like I've been around that block a little bit. And being a part of this community in Washington D.C., I do want to like pull the veil back. I want people to understand, because I talk about this a lot with family members in the small town community that I grew up with in California. I try to demystify Washington D.C. and I try to say like yes and like, and I think here we need a yes and. Yes, we need more like more voices in the room, like brought to the room, brought to the table. And I think an organization like us is the right vehicle to help do that, especially for Gen Z on tech issues. And there are a lot of people, young people, a lot of them are my friends who I've known for years, who are also like working with federal agencies in these congressional offices, with the administration, all administrations, on these issues, and are bringing some freshness in perspective. Like I have friends and networks, in a lot of these spaces that are working on tech, bringing AI to the federal government, making sure that they can apply it appropriately where necessary to like streamline processes. So I want to say, yes, we need to come in. Yes, we need more voices. And there are also a lot of young leaders who are trying to educate and bring folks up to speed on tech, which is rapidly developing all the time. We do have some young folks who are also at the helm, like who are leaders, right? We have quite a few millennial members of Congress now. We have our first Gen Z member of Congress. Yay, like we need more of those. And that's a start. And there are some good people doing work in DC that are just human beings. Like there's no weird like things going on, like shadow governments. Like unfortunately, it's not that cool. Like, but it's a yes and, right? And so I just wanted to like share that, take a moment to recognize that, because I don't want people at home to think, nobody's doing this. Like the government's not bringing in any voices. They're not like trying to like, integrate into like the future AI tech. They are. It's hard when government intentionally moves slow and tech moves so fast. So I just wanted to provide that context also so my friends don't get upset in DC that like I didn't recognize that they're working really hard every day, because they are working very hard every day. Yeah. I want to move us into some questions around what's next for social media. Is TikTok the first of many platforms to be challenged? Could other foreign owned apps face similar scrutiny in the future? And what does this mean for global social media landscape? I personally get very concerned about this because I think like global social media contributes to society, worldwide communication, enabling the sharing of information, ideas across borders, fostering a sense of global community, empowering individuals to express their opinions, driving social change across the world. I think global platforms are good for society. But is this a concern? Like, are you fearful that like maybe other apps will be challenged and that like this global social media community is going to get like cut into pieces?
I think we're going to see some sort of social media battle of some sort for a very long time until we can fully understand it. I feel like when people don't really understand something, there's going to be some sort of ruckus, right? And so I feel like right now we're still learning, we're still gathering our knowledge about what social media is, what platforms are doing, you know? I feel like every platform at some point is going to go through something. I think TikTok is just that one where it's, I don't know, she's just very much an it girly right now. TikTok is the it girly and it is what it is and that's how it rolls and that's amazing and I think that's profound if you are able to constantly reinvent yourself and create something so new, you know, you're gonna face adversity. You know, when you're able to create newness and you're talking about freshness, you're gonna face adversity. And I feel like that's just what happens when you are definitely a platform like TikTok. There's so many different quirks. And I feel like that's why I love TikTok because it's like me, I'm quirky. And so many different quirks, so many different things, but no matter what, the platform is just phenomenal. So I feel like it's going to be fine. I feel like every social media platform at some point, because everyone's kind of looking towards TikTok, is going to face that kind of same conversation no matter what. So I feel like it's life. I don't know. TikTok is going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So many people depend on it. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be completely fine. If anything, social media, definitely as we dive into virtual reality and it gets more in tune with the body and connecting with the body normally, it's going to be this constant little tizzy, but it's the best. It's such a new world. And I just love creating in it. I love being in it. And I think for me, definitely, as I'm taking my visual art more seriously, I feel like we're all just going to grow and expand into our best versions of ourselves, excuse me. So, yes, that's it. I don't know. TikTok, we're always growing. We're all growing. It's going to be phenomenal no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm just so excited to see the future, right? I mean, as an organization that's here working with like this upcoming generation, because for those that don't know, like Gen Z is like as old as 27, 28, and like as young as like 14. So like we are a generation that's growing, like entering the workforce, like going through education, like entering like art communities and performance communities. And like we are working with a lot of incredible leaders that are starting out. Some of them like already have millions of followers, right? Like you, and that's incredible. And I am hopeful that 10 years from now, like we will still be here and these platforms and these communities that we have started to build on platforms like TikTok will still be around. And that we will have the tools, the understanding to better address real concerns for national security, for protections for individuals' rights and liberties, while also making sure that like we are still creating platforms where people can be themselves. Because yeah, like that's certainly the case for what people have been able to do with TikTok. I want to start to close this out here. And this kind of final area of focus segment is, what can Gen Z do now? And a question I have for you here is, how can we future-proof our digital lives? Like, regardless of what apps are around, regardless of like whether we're all just like using chips in our heads in 10 years to like connect on social media, whatever, like how do we future proof? Like, what advice would you give creators to stay flexible in the way that they're building communities and audiences?
Just to keep thinking, keep creating ideas, keep going, keep coming up with something new that makes your creativity blossom in a different way. You know what I mean? I think that's the only thing I could really say is just, yeah, keep thinking, keep creating new ideas, keep working. I think that's one thing for sure. Me, as I'm taking this moment to take a step back, it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to come back. It's okay to revisit. It's okay to start over. It's okay to restart. It's okay to get up and know that you can expand upon the creation that you're creating. Just keep expanding it, keep pushing it. And one day it'll make you feel fulfilled. Just keep going. Yeah, I think that's the only thing I would say is just keep creating the ideas, keep going, keep expanding, and keep upgrading it. That's all I've been doing. Every idea that I've ever had, I'm just upgrading it. How can I make this into 5 more ideas? Take one idea, make it into 5. Just keep thinking, keep creating, keep expanding. And that's it.
Yeah. I think that's fair advice. I mean, certainly like we're trying to be everywhere, like where our community is, and just like experimenting, seeing where we can engage with communities across platforms. I think like not putting all your eggs in one basket, obviously, because things shift. Like some things do come and go. And so just making sure that there are options is good as well for like anyone who's building communities out there digitally. I want to kind of direct this last piece to myself. So staying informed, tech policy. Tech policy changes fast, and there is, I think, that question of like, what's the best way for Gen Z to stay up to date on these changes, engage and adapt to shifting policies and the shifting digital world. There is a concern here because if you open up your phones right now and you go on social media and you look up TikTok, you look up, TikTok divestment, you're going to see a lot of junk content that like is trying to report on the news, but is not doing it in a good way, or is not giving you like an accurate depiction of what's going on, or is like clearly pushing a political agenda. And I ask people to be cautious about just like who they're getting their news from, making sure that like we're not like victims to like that like big flashy tagline, which we talked about in our last webinar on like disinformation, because when there are these big topics, these big news topics that are circulating, a lot of bad actors will use that to leverage like their following, growing their following, their impressions, their engagement with just like the craziest news that is not accurate. And then that like skews what we actually think is happening. So, we're trying to give you that like clarity here. Hopefully like this is helpful to people. But just know that like there are organizations like ZETA that are looking to continue to provide like factual information, good, honest content to people about what is going on, what we can do. And we will continue to do that. Over the course of the next few weeks, our team will certainly be paying attention to what's happening with TikTok and be bringing those updates to our community on our social platforms and through programs like this Tech Talk. So I invite everybody who hasn't checked us out yet all over social media, YouTube. You can find us at Connect ZETA, ZETA. And I also want to invite folks to check out Kai and her amazing work. Like, I mean, I'm just blown away, like, by everything that you're doing and the fact that, like, you're one of our younger Gen Z community leaders in the space. And I can't wait for you to, like, be, like, just, like, selling out huge arenas and, like, this, like, global superstar. That we have, like, such an awesome friendship and partnership with. So please check out all of her handles as well, like, which we will link here in the video. And thank you all for joining. Really, Kai, I don't know if you have any closing words before we check in with the team and see if there are any questions from the audience.
No, just thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you, Zeta. I always love chatting. I always love talking. Thank you for this opportunity.
I will say, like, keep an eye out for more content. Like I said, we have a lot more coming in the weeks ahead. Keep an eye out for our collabs with Kai in 2025 through our fellowship program. Really excited about all that, and thank you all so much.